1 out of 5 on competence and quality of logistics services. Sri Lanka ranked slightly below 2.5 out of 5. And the information also goes on to say that the busiest ports in the world are determined on the basis of the container traffic passing through them. And this tells us that you don't have to be the biggest port to be the busiest, who generally process containers and cargo using efficient means and processes. CASA has consistently been involved in suggesting improvements on the processes we follow, as well as providing awareness of good practices by engaging with experts such as Mr. Phuk Seng in the industry to enhance the knowledge of our members as well as other stakeholders of what's taking place in developed economies to get a kind of relative benchmark. So in this context, we are privileged to have Mr. Phuk Seng with us today, who will share his expertise and experience in the subject provided, and also to understand very importantly from him some of the best practices and processes followed in Singapore, which will no doubt enhance your knowledge as well as give all of us an ideas and practices that could potentially be adopted. Before I hand over, just a quick point on the questions that you may have. Before I hand over, just a quick point presentation on type in your questions. We'll questions that you may have. Before I hand over, just a quick point presentation on type in your questions. We'll questions that you may have. Before I hand over, just a quick point presentation on type in your questions. We'll questions that you may have. Before I hand over, just a quick point presentation on type in your questions. We'll questions that you may have. Before I hand over, just a quick point presentation. Revenue questions that all of you presentation revenue this afternoon I will share with you some of the experience and story of Singapore, how we have gone through some of the digitalization story of course the last section last part of the presentation I will talk a bit about the future, the mega port that Singapore is developing for us. So I hope all of you are seeing my screen. So this afternoon we will have 4 items on the agenda. So at the end of the session we will have some time for Q&A. So we will first talk about at the end of the story how the port began, sometimes the key milestones that developed or made Singapore port into what it is today. And then the next item we'll talk about the port automation and digitalization. And the third item on the agenda, I will walk through the full digital processes for vessel and containers, starting from the maiden voyage of the vessel that calls in Singapore, how it comes alongside discharging and loading of containers, and how the containers are taken out and of the port and brought into the port and so forth. So this is the whole digital process that I will walk through. And then the last part, we'll talk a little bit about the future, the new generation port. Okay, so to begin with, this is Port of Singapore PSA at a glance. So I will not spend very much. I won't spend some time on this. But basically, we are divided into several terminals. 3 of them are in the city area, and then we have Pasmanjang somewhere in the west. And then we have the Jurong Island Terminal. I just want to touch a little bit on this PSA Jurong Island Terminal. Not so much on the Jurong Island Terminal, but on Jurong Island itself. Jurong Island is actually a cluster of 6 small islands on the west side of Singapore. And our government has actually filled up the land between the islands to form a big island and called Jurong Island. And this is used for petrochemical industry, all the chemicals, oil refinery and all that are all situated there. So this is a very interesting project.
So as an overview, PSA has 25 container berths with 21 kilometers of quay length. And we are having about 197 quay cranes as at now. So all our, or most of our berths are up to 18 meters deep draft. And these are the daily sailings that we have. So it is important to have this connection to be able to be a transshipment hub. And I truly believe Sri Lanka Colombo Port has the potential to be a transshipment hub. To be very honest with you, in the 1980s and 90s, we in Singapore were looking at Colombo as a competitor. I mean, I'm very upfront and very frank. And because there were cargo that go through, passing from the east to the west, not transshipping through Singapore, but transshipping through Colombo. So there must be some potential or some, good reasons why vessels call at Colombo. And based on this PSA in Singapore, we have developed connections to the various ports, and that's where we attract a lot of transshipment containers. So they are the e-platforms that support the economic growth of Singapore. I think these are three important platforms, which I will touch on a little bit more on the PortNet. First, we have the TradeNet, which is the trade national single window. So I guess most of you are familiar with it. This is the single window that integrates the customs declaration and with all the other OGA's declaration. So this is implemented on 1st January 1989. And on the same day, PortNet was implemented by PSA. PSA was the owner, and at that time, we were the Port Authority. That's why the name PSA stands for Port of Singapore Authority. But after the splitting of the regulatory role from the port operator role, PSA maintained the brand name as a port operator, and we formed PSA International, while the regulatory role is given to a new agency called Maritime and Port Authority. So PortNet was the port community system rolled out on the 1st of January 1989 on the same day as TradeNet. And I was very privileged to be part of the team that actually conceptualized, designed and developed the PortNet for Singapore, for PSA at that time. I joined PSA in 1980 and then spent 23 years doing PortNet and the port automation systems. And then after that, I joined Crimson Logic and to handle TradeNet as well. And there's a third platform called MarineNet, and this is the the e-platform that is operated and owned by the MPA, the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. So all the documentations, all the communications related to vessels coming into the Singapore port waters, submitting regulatory documents required by IMO and so forth, including pilots and tug services requirements and the other services required by the ship. All these requests are submitted through MarineNet. The ship and all these requests are submitted through MarineNet. The ship and all these requests are submitted through MarineNet because the ship and all these documents required for submission to the port to PSA for handling of containers and cargo are all done through PortNet. And whereas TradeNet mainly focus on the trade declaration, the import, export, and transshipment requirements by the Singapore Customs and the other OGAs. So these are the three very important electronic platforms that supports the economic growth of Singapore. And all these three platforms are interconnected. So some information can be shared across, and we work closely together with each of the owners and operator of the platform. So this is the Singapore model, I say. The TradeNet The OGAs are the government sectors users, and the public sector, private sector, we have the trade community. Portnet will be more on the port community, including shipping agents, freight forwarders, trucking companies, and so forth. And MarineNet are the service providers. So when a ship calls at the port, I think all of you would know better than me. They may not just be handling cargo alone. They will also require some services such as bunkers and water supply, taking ship supplies, and so forth. So this is all handled in the MarineNet platform. In fact, to give you some figures, in Singapore, more than 60% of the ships that call in Singapore waters actually do not come alongside to handle cargo. They all are anchored at the anchorage, and they are here to take up some of these services like bunkering, water supplies, even ship minor repairs of the ship. And we also have quite a number of ships coming to Singapore just to change the crew, because we have an extensive airline connection. So the ship's crew may be due for home leave. So the ship will bring them to Singapore, fly in a new set of crew, and then fly out the original set for home leave. So this is what we do as a maritime hub. And in fact, I think a lot of ports, including Colombo, aspire to be a maritime hub, because these are the services that the ship needs when it calls at your port. So we try to provide or satisfy as much of the needs as possible. So these are the key milestones. The Port of Singapore Authority, PSA, was formed in 1964. And then in 1967, we established the data processing department using a leased mainframe computers. We were using this leased computer mainframe. Then later on, we bought our own mainframe, but we didn't even have money to buy the original IBM mainframe. So we bought the clone. In those days, there are a lot of clone, but they are legalized, legal clone mainframe. So it's a cheaper version of the original IBM. So we first started data processing in 1967. And 1972 is a very significant year for PSA. And this is where we started our containerization journey. So the first container ship, MV Nihon, arrived in Singapore Tanjung Pagar Terminal. And in fact, that was the first container terminal in Southeast Asia. So this is where we started the containerization. And then 1973, we launched the online container handling information system. So you can see how we have evolved. First, we started with data processing. Data processing, mainly churning out invoices and statistics and so forth. But we launched the online capturing of online information for containers in 1973, still using the mainframe. We call it in short cheese. When I joined PSA, I was in the team that developed and maintained some of these modules. And every movement of the container is keyed into the system. Before we have this, I believe some of you here may have seen in those early days, containers are tracked using what they call T-card. Every container has a card in the control room where you slot them in, and then you track where you move the container to. So, but we started the online tracking in 1973, and this is where we started more intensive computerization in 1979. Vessel information system and our ship planning system, stowage planning. In fact, in 1979, it was a very basic storage planning. We were only doing the trim and stability calculations. I remember when I joined PSA, I was in the team that actually do the program that calculates the torsional moment, the center of gravity, the CG, and so forth. So using the ship data. So that was the first version of a very simple ship storage planning. And in 1984, we started the proof of concept of a PCS, Port Community System, and we call it data box. I must admit that Singapore is not the first country in the world that implements a port community system. The first port probably was Felixstowe, and also followed by Hamburg. But PSA, we did the first version in 1984, and later on it was evolved into the PortNet, the PCS today. So in 1988, we started to implement the CTOS, the Computer Integrated Terminal Operation System. And this is a fully in-house built system. And at this point in time, we move away from the mainframe for the implementation of CTOS. So 1989, again, when I mentioned, which I mentioned earlier on, we launched the world's first nationwide PCS. And in 1991, we established the Singapore Port Institute, which evolves into PSA University today. So this is, in fact, I believe many of the pilots from Sri Lanka would have come to Singapore to be trained using our simulator. So in the PSA, in the Singapore Port Institute, we have the simulator for pilot training that, can simulate different scenarios, different weather conditions, and so forth. This is another very significant milestone, but I think this is very important. The reason why I put this up is that this concept is a very powerful concept, and it is up to today. In fact, ports that have this what they call it, the port logistic or port-centric logistic facilities are actually doing very well and serving the community, serving the shipping lines and the shippers very well. So in 1994, PSA built the Keppel District Park, which is just next to the container terminal, and it is linked by a bridge, and it is built within the free zone. Okay, just to give some background, all the ports and airports in Singapore are designated by law as free trade zone. That's why we are known as the entrepot port. So all the seaports and including the airport logistics park designated by law as free trade zone, and Keppel District Park as well. So goods move from the container terminal, after discharging from the ship, goes into this Keppel District Park for distribution, or unpacking, or what you normally call cross-docking. So this is a very important concept, and why we call it state of the art. In fact, if you look at the building itself, a lot of people thought it is a private residential condominium because the facade is so good. It doesn't look like a warehouse. The reason being that, it is built very near to the residential area. So we want to, give the assurance to the residents nearby that, this warehouse will not cause the property to devalue. And if you look at the building itself, there are only 4 pillars in this whole building. So the way it was constructed was the pillars were built, and then the roof was built on the floor, and then it's hoisted up. So there are only 4 pillars. So you all of you probably will realize that, will know that For warehouse, if you have too many pillars, it will be very inconvenient and difficult to design your stacking and all that. So this is using something that was very advanced at that point in time. So this Keppel District Park includes freight station. In fact, the whole district park is leased out to shipping lines. Our main customers using the Keppel District Park are the shipping lines, where they serve their customers and for transshipment and reshipment of cargo and cross-docking. So we have containers from different countries carrying different products coming to Singapore, put into the district park and then pack into containers to serve the regional customers or other customers where they may need the various types of cargo. So this is a very important concept, which this is the next slide I will explain a little bit more. The concept of port-centric logistics. I mean, in most of the countries, in most countries, the distribution park or logistics service warehouses may be located very far away from the port. So there is this transportation that, when you take the cargo out of the port, you need to bring them maybe 100 kilometers away before it, is stored into the distribution center and so forth. So by building the logistics services within the port or near to the port, this actually cuts down the transportation and a lot of cost savings. So PSA actually started this way back in 1994, where we built the district park next to the container terminal and reduce supply chain links and cutting costs. And most important, for now, we know that it is contributing to the green environment. So this is getting popular. A lot of ports around the world are also building this, what they call the port-centric logistics concept. So in 1997, PSA was corporatized. As I mentioned, the government split the regulatory role from the port operation role. At that period of time, a lot of ports around the world also do that. The idea was that, if you are the player, you cannot be the referee, right? So you cannot regulate yourself because there could be conflict of interest. Not very serious conflict, but I think serious enough that governments around the world decide to split the role. So a lot of ports are establish just a regulatory role, and then the port operations is corporatized or privatized. But still, there are some ports that are owned by the authority, so those are the sort of state-owned ports there are. But just a simple example of how a conflict of interest may arise if you are the operator, at the same time you are the port authority. So if you are encouraging or you want to grow your handling of dangerous goods business, so as a port operator, you would want to encourage as much DG and, all types of DG, even the more dangerous one, I don't mind handling it. But as a port authority, you have a responsibility to the land and to the buildings around the port, and so that you are going to make sure that it's a safe place. So, but as a port operator, from the business commercial perspective, you want to handle as much as possible in terms of types of DG as well as quantity. So the regulator will come in to limit for this chemical, you can only bring in this amount, and so forth. So this is just a very simple example of conflict of interest. So during that period of time, a lot of ports around the world split their roles into two. At the same time, in 1997, we implement the flow-through gate. And this is where we can clear a truck within 25 seconds. So this is how the flow-through gate looks like. Actually, it is manless. There are no people on the ground. So there are operators sitting on the bridge on top. One person is managing about 2 to 3 lanes. The reason why they can do this is because all the information are preloaded into the system, and the information to verify the containers, the drivers, and the truck are all automated, part of the whole system. So as I listed here, there are a whole list of systems that are used to achieve this 25-second flow-through gate. First, at PortNet, all the information way before the truck arrives at the gate, the transport company will have to put in the information into the PortNet that my this container which I'm bringing into the port or delivering, I'm going to use this vehicle ID ABC, and then this is the driver so and so. So all this information are preloaded into the gate system, and then we have the gate scheduling. So they are scheduled to come in at a certain point in time. And then we have the container number recognition system, which uses a set of CCTVs to take a snapshot of the container numbers and then digitalize it so that you can match that number with what was declared by the trucking company in the PortNet. And then, of course, the driver ID, previously using thumbprint. In the early days, we were using the pass, with a barcode. Then later on, it changed to thumbprint, and then now it's using facial recognition. And then the truck ID, it's electronic weighbridge. There's a weighbridge, and it's connected so that in fact, the truck doesn't stop at the gate. It just drives very slowly as they approach the gate, so that the weighbridge can take the weight of the container, and then the barrier, once that it has checked everything is in good order, the barrier will automatically open. And then, of course, we must have the customs integration. Information about accepting, releasing the container would have come from customs way before the truck arrived at the gate. So this is a very important concept which I will elaborate a little bit on. The concept of advanced information. In fact, this is also one of the 4 pillars of the WCO SAFE SAFE but for that the SAFE framework for trade facilitation. Advanced information is important because you need to get the information way before the physical arrival of the ship, physical arrival of the truck or the container, so that you can do your risk management, you can do your planning, and you can, when the truck arrives, the information, the system just need to match the information. And then within 25 seconds, it can clear the gate. So after that, in the late 1990s and 2000 and beyond, we started enhancing port operations automation with the various manless gate, remote yard control, and so forth, and remote reefer temperature monitoring. So that took us about 20 years before, where we are now, actually the whole port is working like a clockwork without actually much intervention, because all the plans are preloaded on the container equipment, handling equipment. So every truck, every crane, yard crane, key crane has the computer on board, and they just execute according to the plan. And in 2019, PSA launched the Global PortNet, a global version of the PortNet, which has been used in Singapore for the last 30 years. So next, I will move into the port automation and digitalization. As most of you may be familiar, this is the overview of the port ecosystem. So what you see on the right-hand side, on the right side of the diagram, is the back-end system of the terminal, what we call the TOS, Terminal Operation System. And it has a host of planning systems such as berth planning, storage planning, yard planning, resource assigning equipment and manpower to operate the equipment and so forth. And then the information that is required to handle the ship, information about the vessels, containers, are all loaded into these planning systems. And these are received from the portnet. And when the ship comes alongside, all the plans are preloaded into the equipment that is going to operate the ship. And then the plans will start executing through wireless transmission of the messages. So this is the backend systems where information required to operate the containers and vessels comes from the port community system. So port community system is sometimes I would like to call it a window to the external world. It plays a very important role, not only just as the information exchange platform, but in a way it actually keeps the external users from getting into your backend systems. I know that there are many ports around the world which gives out user ID and password to shipping community like yourself, shipping agents, forwarders, and so forth, to access the backend TOS. By submitting information into it or by retrieving information. So the PCS is the part that segregates the external users from internal users. The TOS is to be used only strictly by the terminal staff for the management of the containers in the port, whereas the PCS is the customer facing, the port community facing, where information received are sent through a secure link between the PCS and the TOS. And then, of course, we have the feedback loop on the invoicing, statistics, and so forth. So the PCS plays a very important role here. So back to the TOS, as I mentioned, these are the key modules: planning, operations. You have the ship ops, yard ops, and the gate ops. When the ship comes alongside, all this will be triggered, and with the command and control control center and billing and report. So this is what most of the terminals would have at the back end. It may not be a full-fledged, but it may be some simple systems, but it is important because you need to track all the containers that are discharged in your yard and when they are taken out of the gates. So this is some of this. This is part of the CTOS actually, where every truck has every yard crane, key crane has a ruggedized PC, and the automatic position detection system for the yard. Well, it's actually a very simple concept. So you just have text on the ground, and then you can use GPS, and you just need to track the movement of the RTG or the on the yard crane, so that you know exactly where you put the crane, put the container. So we have GPS and automated crane systems, and in PSA we have our own private network. So in fact, later on you will see that in TOS we have our own private 5G network. So this is the amount of emphasis and importance that the Singapore government placed on our port. We have been fighting for private network bandwidth since the 1990s, So, and the government is very kind to accord certain bandwidth, certain frequencies assigned just for the port to use. And then now with the 5Gs in Tuas, we also have our own private 5G network. Because if you are using the public network, or in a lot of ports, I see they're using the mobile network. I mean, it still functions, but you will not be able to achieve that level of accuracy, efficiency, the level of the response, and how fast you can receive the message, or when you send out the message, and ensure that there's no loss in the information. So private network is within our control. So this is the our control center. In fact, this is they are monitoring the operations. In fact, if you have a chance to visit PSA today, you will see that we have yard crane operators sitting in the control room, one person managing about 2 to 3 yard cranes. So basically, the yard crane is like almost fully automated. It just execute all the moves, and then the yard crane, the operator is just to ensure that everything works according to the plan. So we move on to this concept of the PCS, the Port Community System. Well, I think this may not be new to you, but I just hope that by sharing of this concept, it will probably give you some new insights, I hope. So Port Community System sometimes is also known as a Port Single Window, or what they call the e-logistics platform. So the key purpose, the very fundamental purpose of the PCS is to facilitate information flow. As I mentioned, in fact, when I was in PSA, I was in the IT division. Our operations director would come very often and tell our IT department, that your main function or your mission is to ensure that information arrives way before the physical arrival of my ship, before the arrival of the container and the truck at the gate. So the PCS is the piece that facilitates this. So the community will input all the information before the physical arrival, so that advanced information can be used for planning and as well as in some cases for risk management, risk assessment, regulate the gate flow, the traffic flow at the gates. So the PCS plays one primary role, and then the other role, which I will mention later on, is the B2B communication. So as I think you will know, the stakeholders of the PCS, the government agencies and businesses, which will include the depot, shippers, consignees, stevedores, pilot tugs, and all the service providers. So you can see that at the bottom of this diagram, I have a typical supply chain from exporter to the importer. So this is the whole chain of stakeholders in the supply chain, and PCS sits right in the center between the loading port and the discharging port. So at the point of loading, the PCS will get all the information, and then at the point of discharge, it will use the same information for operating the ship and the containers. But it is a very important piece that sits right in the center of the supply chain. So, PCS is expected of a modern port. I think as most carriers would agree that, if I intend to call a particular port, I would first need to know, are there a lot of paperwork, documents that need to be handled in hard copies, or is it fully digitalized, system? So this is important, and it's a reasonable expectation because I think most ports should be able to provide that channel for communicating with the port users, the port community. Improving competitive position, I need not mention too much. And usually the PCS is the key component or one of the key components in the national initiative. It could be a total trade platform. It could be a total trade transport committee. Some countries, they call it the trade and transport council, whatever it is. But PCS is the port community system is always one of the components in this initiative. So the importance of the seaport and the importance of having a PCS. So of course, this is where if you strive to be advanced maritime hub, then when the ship comes in, you must have this platform for submitting all the regulatory requirements as well as ordering of services. The PCS is a platform that you can actually communicate with your suppliers for your bunkers, your waters, and your ship supplies and so forth. So the key components, as I mentioned, we can divide them into 4 parts. One is submission of operations documents. So for container ships, you have the vessel bay plan. Before the ship arrives, the shipping agent like yourself will have to submit the bay plea through EDI. It should be submitted through the PCS, and then the PCS will send this into the TOS for planning of the ship for discharge and loading planning. So the PCS is the window that receives this, and then storage instructions, discharging list, the details of every container to be discharged, export shipping note, and so forth. All these would be requirements or documents required for operating the vessel. And then the service request. So before the ship comes in, you will need to apply for berth, order for pilots and tugs and so forth. So all this will be done through the PCS without paper submission. That's very important because everybody involved in that operation is on the same platform. So when you submit a berth application, the terminal will receive it. When you order a pilot through the ship or order tugs or water bunkers through that PCS, all these service suppliers will be able to see the order in that platform. And of course, a copy of this will be given to the Port Authority or the Maritime Authority. In some cases, approval may be required, from the authority for the ship to take bunkers or for the, in fact, it's more for service provider to provide this service to the ship. So everybody is on the same platform and information is transparent across. So this will minimize or if not totally eliminate miscommunications, late relaying of information and so forth. The third component, we have the service information services. So the shipping community can look at the vessel schedules, berthing schedule, track containers, and all the container activities. I think as the shipping agent, you know how important it is for container activities to be received in a timely manner. That means the moment that your container is discharged at the terminal, you should be receiving that information so that you can update your principal system, right? I mean, when we started PortNet, the shipping lines and the shipping agents were so grateful because the local agent had a hard time coping up with data entry into the principal system, because when they receive the activities that these 300 containers have been discharged, they have to start keying into the principal system because they have a timeline. I think within 24 hours they must update the principal that where is the container. So when we implement the PCS, they were also grateful that they can receive this electronically, and then they just upload to the principal system. So this is a simple job for integration, but the amount of manpower, time savings is tremendous. So even get in, get out, discharge load, staffing and staffing, all these activities can be received through the PCS into the shipping agent systems and then get uploaded. Even the Excel file will do the job. But the PCS, in the PCS, most PCS will support UN Edifact message format, as well as XML format, and in fact some customized to accept Excel file format. So we have the service report. These are the information services, dwell time report, performance report, and so forth. So I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about this vessel schedule. The vessel schedule is where you put in the schedule of your vessel, the service. That means if you have a Far East Europe service, that passes through Colombo, you will have to put in that schedule from all the way for all the ports of call, so that your local shipper can search for appropriate vessels to ship the cargo from Colombo to whichever port they want. So this is a very powerful tool. In fact, I think in the early days, all shipping lines and agents would publish this in the newspapers every day. In fact, in Singapore, we used to have the shipping times, So every liner will publish their schedule. But of course, this has all gone electronic, and it is all on the portnet, on the PCS. And the PCS can also provide some search criteria. So if I'm a shipper in Colombo, I want to search for a vessel that calls at Rotterdam on this particular date, and then my cargo is ready for loading in Colombo on this date. So I just put in these parameters, the system will be able to search. It's exactly the same as you do airline air ticket booking. In fact, if you in the latest version of the global portnet in Singapore, we also help to search for transshipment. That means cargo from Colombo can be transshipping to Dubai, to some European ports, or to Africa and whatever. So we do search for transshipment as well. So this is a very powerful tool. It serves the community, and it is a very good channel for the carriers to actually promote their services. The fourth component is the B2B. And I think very often we neglect this. I think you are in the business, you would also know that, probably you feel neglected also at times, because all the ports and governments are focusing more on the B2G, how you should be submitting, or how the businesses should be submitting the documents that I need. By law, regulations, you need to give me this, whether electronically or on paper or whatever. But it's often forgotten that among the businesses themselves, there are a lot of communications between the shipping agent or carrier and the whole logistics players. You communicate with your forwarders, with the truckers, with the depot operators, and you give instructions to that depot to release empty containers for packing, or for the consignee to return the empties after they have taken out the cargo. So all these are the B2B communications, and probably without electronic platform, I believe this will be given through emails or through whatever social media, but the PCS plays a very important role, because the same information will be accessible and transparent to all the parties involved. So if you issue a release order to depot operator, to the forwarder, to say that collect your empties at this depot, so the depot operator will be able to receive that information from the PCS. The forwarder or the trucking company will also at the same time, receive this. And the terminals may also be involved, in some cases. So all these are a lot of B2B. Later on, I talk about the delivery order. In fact, when you have a PCS, your delivery order can be electronic. In Singapore, it's really paperless DO. We have done away with the paper DO for many years. So this is the B2B communications, which is very important, and this is one of the also very important roles of a PCS.
Unless you join the
So this is the overall view of how the PCS is connected. So the whole community is linked, uses the PCS, and the PCS is connected to each of the TORs. Every terminal may have the separate TOR. So information received here will be sent to the respective TORs, and it may be connected to your free zone or your special economic zone, or you may have road and rail and air. And nowadays, a lot of cargo are transported through intermodal transportation mode. More often than not, it is intermodal than a single mode of transport. So your rail connection and your air. In fact, Singapore handles a lot of sea air transshipment. I believe Sri Lanka also handle a fair bit of this, because the concept of sea air is also very powerful, especially for seasonal goods, right? You know. So 3 months before Christmas, you can all ship by sea. But by November, you ship by sea, it may be a bit risky. So, by December, definitely you need to have sea air, because your last leg, you may go by air, you just take 1 or 2 days or half a day, so that you achieve your be able to meet your customers' requirements for the goods to arrive on time. So PS, Singapore started the sea air intermodal way in the 1990s. So the PCS will be connected to this, so that information need not be keyed into the airline system. You can just transmit the information from the PCS, whichever second link of the transportation mode. Right? And then, of course, it's also integrated with all the government agencies and with the trade single window, supply chains, and so forth. So the important thing is that information. I'm just quoting the single window definition by WTO, that information should not be keyed more than once. So there's a definition of single window. So if we have 5 agencies requiring that information, the business should not be required to key 5 times. You should keep once in the single window, and it's to be distributed to all the 5 agencies. So if you look at intermodal, if you include all the agencies involved, there will be quite a number of times that the same information has to be provided. So with the PCS, you can actually do away with all this duplication. The system will be able to distribute this to all the relevant parties. The PCS itself, I think one of the concerns when I talk about PCS, a lot of people will ask me, hey, how do I ensure that my information is secure? So there are, of course, the security part, which, like, today, is everywhere you hear of, cyber security attack or this. But that is not just pertaining to PCS, but every system, So there'll be all sorts of firewall, all sorts of checks that is done. But the access rights management is very important. So if you are the shipping agent, the system will allow you only to perform functions related to a shipping agent. If you are a forwarder, you can only perform functions related to a forwarder. At the same time, you can only look at information or submit information that you are handling, or containers or vessels. So if you are representing a particular liner, you can only submit the berth application for this shipping, for this vessel. And if you have a container operator, ABC, you can only submit and access information related to containers bearing the code ABC, So the system has a tight control, make sure that information are not accessible to non-relevant or non-authorized parties. And this is very important to have the assurance for the whole community that, my information, how much I handle, or how many trucks I'm handling or having to deliver containers. All these are not shared or leaked to competitors, so to speak. So the PCS has a very stringent check on the access rights. So the PortNet is the brand name of the port community system developed in Singapore, first launched in 1989. This has been kept within Singapore, used only for Singapore port PSA for the last 30 over years. And before we implement PortNet, I did an impact analysis, the before and the after, So we used to have a whole section of data entry staff who receive documents from shipping lines on paper and then be key into our own system. At that time, it's the CHIS, Container Handling Information System. We also have a lot of people answering phone calls from the stakeholders, to inquire where is my container, is it discharged, things like that, Of course, about changes to the ETV and so forth. All this will be communicated over the phone and so forth. But with the PCS, with the PortNet, everything is digitalized. All the relevant parties can see that information in the same system. And we also have a statistics department where we have to codify the manifest, for capturing statistics required by the Singapore government statistics department, So we have a whole bunch of people doing this. But once we have that information electronically, all these are done away with. And documentation room. I think when I travel around the world to many ports, I still see this quite in a lot of ports. To be very frank, there are still many counters in documentation room, and drivers will drive the truck to the gate and park it somewhere nearby, bring a whole stack of documents to the documentation room, pay up all the low charges, the charges ever, take the DO, exchange for EIR, and then after that go into the gate. So when we implement PortNet, we actually do away with all these counters. It's not an overnight job. You can be sure. We took quite a while, but we progressively reduce the counters. This is one way. We progressively reduce the counter so that people who doesn't want to use electronic submission will have to queue up at the few counters left. So then you realize that, you see that people are turning to electronic submission rather than, it is very difficult to change the mindset, right? I mean, the clerk that's handling the documents. In fact, when we implement PortNet, to be very honest, we wipe up the whole what we call it. We used to have this courier boys, who ride on a motorbike and then send manifest on paper, transport the manifest from carrier to whoever, the authorities with the port and so forth. So when we go electronic, all these people are done away with. I mean, it is a very delicate and sensitive issue, but we have to bite the bullet. And of course, in fact, PSA, when we implement the PortNet, our chairman actually addressed the whole, all our staff to tell them that nobody will lose his job because we implement PortNet. We gave them the assurance. As I mentioned early on, we have a whole department of data entry clouds. We have a help desk who's answering calls on the containers and all that. But these people will lose the job when you go electronic, but they are retrained to do other jobs, so they are redeployed. So our chairman came out to give this assurance: nobody will be retrenched, nobody will lose the job because of because of PSA going electronic. So this is a very important message. Likewise, the Singapore government, when we push for digitalization, we also give assurance that in fact, Singapore. Sometimes I hear too much of it. I think of it as propaganda, but this is important. The government always remind our people, our citizens, that you need to be retrained, and to transform your industry. This is a very important message. But because when new technology appears, your job may be totally wiped out. So we need to adapt, and we really need to be to get ourselves retrained. In fact, Singapore government is giving a lot of incentives to people who change their career or get retrained to take up new jobs and so forth. So we have done away with the counters. And of course, we have the crowding at the gate. And this is a very common sight. Almost every port that I visit, I see this very common scenario. People crowding at the gate, where, the documents are passed to the driver, cash is exchanged so that, they can pay and then go into the gate. And a lot of wastage of time. And you see, we realize this, that, when the shipping lines give us the manifest, hard copy manifest in printed form, printed on computerized paper or computer paper. In the IBM, in the mainframe days, you have this 15 by 11. Those of you who are in my era may know. 15 by 11 means the width of the paper is 15 inch and 11 inch long. So this is like an A3 size actually. Sprocketed holes on both sides, and then it's printed by an impact printer. So we receive stacks and stacks of this manifest printed from the shipping line's computer, and then we take this information and rekey into our system. So we think it's a bit foolish, right? I mean, the systems can talk to each other, can't they? Right? So we started, going host to host, system to system integration. In fact, I remember in 1984 when I first received a magnetic tape from Merz Line. It's like a 30 cm diameter magnetic tape, and the Merz Line told me, "Hey, this is my manifest. You go and read it into your mainframe computer. I'm not going to give you paper anymore." So we tried very hard, and finally we can read the magnetic tape. So this is how we started, But in this era, I believe things have improved. And if you go into implementing PCS, all this may not be relevant, but the concept behind this is still very important. The mindset is still very important. So as I was saying, the Singapore PSA has kept the use of Singapore PortNet within Singapore for the last 30 years. But in 2019, we started to develop the global version of the PortNet called Global PortNet. And it is now made available to ports outside Singapore, regardless of whether it's managed by PSA or not. So we have productized it, and we have made this into a product made available to the rest of the world. So PortNet Singapore has actually supported Singapore well for the last 30 over years, and last year it supports 37.5 million TUs, 9,000 truck movements a day. And we have about 300 million transactions every year. So the global version is actually based on the PortNet Singapore, and it encapsulates all the best practices that we have learned, developed, evolved, enhanced over the last 30 over years. And not only that, but we have this experience in understanding the port community processes and the needs of the community. As I mentioned earlier on, sometimes we forget that the businesses themselves also have needs for information exchange. So the global PortNet takes care of the B2G as well as the B2B communication. So it is productized and it's made available to ports outside Singapore. So in fact, the PortNet has gone through several generations, and the global PortNet is now the third generation of the PCS. So the outcome, besides those that I mentioned, I won't say it's a byproduct. It is just underestimating the value of this outcome. You know, when we have a PCS, all your information about vessels, containers, cargo, truck movement, everything is centralized in a database. And this is actually a gold mine of information. You have a lot of a wealth of information in that database where you can mine and you can create a lot of value. And you can actually do a lot of analysis, now what we call business intelligence, business analytics, and so forth, or data analytics. So these are very important. I mean, we started way back in the 1980s and 90s, but it is still relevant today. So we can use that database to measure certain KPIs, to measure performance, you know, berth utilization, yard utilization, waiting time. So as a shipping agent, a carrier representing your principal, you would be very concerned if your ship has to wait 24 hours at the anchorage before given a berth when you come into the port. So these are very important statistics. You know, how many % of the time you are given a berth upon arrival, and how many % you have to wait for 6 hours, 12 hours, and so forth. So these are very important business questions that need an answer. So with that wealth of the database, the data inside that ECS, a lot of values are created out of it. What is the dwell time of containers? How many % are delivered within 3 days, within 6 days, or 9 days, and so forth? So as the port operator, is also important because you can drill down to see, hey, this is, this, I zoom into those that goes beyond maybe 9 days. I need to know why. So drill down into types of containers or the reason why it is not delivered out and so forth. So this is very important because by having this database, you create value and it helps improve efficiency. Just to quote management guru Peter Drucker, who once said that you cannot, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, you know. So something very important to know, you know, you must be able to measure and then you can know where you stand and you can improve it. So truck turnaround time, as a trucking company, you want to know when my truck enters the gate, how long does it take before I get the container mounted and I leave it out gate? Is it 30 minutes or is it 2 hours? So all these are important information. So you can see from this business question that I listed here, the PCS is actually a whole community business. It's not just about the port efficiency. It's not just about carriers, but it involves the forwarders and the truckers and depot operators and so forth. Because it's just like the chain is as strong as the weakest link, right? This is so often quoted. So I often tell my customers when I visit the ports, I told them you will have a very good TOS, very efficient terminal operation system. But the moment you interface with your external parties, your customers, you go paper and you go on manual process. So this doesn't optimize, your digitalization, and the whole community doesn't benefit at all. So the PCS plays that role. So I just used Excel to generate some of these reports. I mean, that's a sample. So you can have an analysis of your by terminal, or as a carrier, you want to look at for that particular month, which vessel voyage handles how much, how many containers, discharge load, and so forth. And your dwell time, how many percent of your containers and what type of containers are delivered in 3 days and so forth. So some of the KPIs, I think vessel waiting time, how many hours does the ship have to wait before given a berth, container dwell time, from ATB to first discharge time. These are important KPIs. So I think when we talk about terminal productivity, which affects the carrier, the liner's productivity, we have to look at in totality a number of parameters. From the ATB to first discharge, this is a very important measurement, which I've been to many ports, and this is often a neglected aspect. I've been to ports where the ship sits there for 24 hours with no activities. So I ask them why. So there's some documents missing. Waiting for certain signatures, or waiting for one piece of information which needs to be verified. So this is very unproductive, right? You know that when the ship sits at the berth, it is actually burning money, right, so to speak. So last loading time, last activity to ATU. So ATU, in Singapore, we have this KPI, 30 minutes. The moment you finish your last activity, 30 minutes, you must sail. If you don't meet the KPI, a lot of people have to answer, write a lot of report to answer why you failed this KPI. In fact, in Singapore, all ships will start operations immediately upon arrival at the berth. There's no waiting time because all the ships are pre-cleared. All the agencies, the port authority, the immigration, the port health, all of them will have cleared the ship before it comes into the port waters, before it comes alongside. So that when the ship arrives at the berth, it can immediately start discharging. Of course, we still need to get the ship captain to agree on the plan and all that. But discharging, normally you can start. The captain is more concerned with the loading, how you store the containers on the ship. So we have to ensure that no time is wasted. So these are the KPIs which can be actually generated from the PCS. Service time for the shipping lines. I think as shipping agents, you are also concerned with voyages, your dwell time, and because all these are very expensive assets, right? Very costly assets. The berth, your container, your equipment. If it is stored with cargo and stuck somewhere in the port, then you are not generating revenue as it should be. And of course, the trucking companies also need to know. So next, it will be quite a long process. I will walk you through the whole digital process from the time the ship calls at Singapore, the first maiden voyage, all the way until the containers are discharged and leave the outgate. So So in the center column, you see the platform that's being used. So when the ship first calls at the port in Singapore, they need to do the vessel registration, right? So we provide this MarineNet. I mean, it's provided by MPA. The shipping agent will register and upload all the certificates, and we will capture the certificate expiry date. I mean, in the past, every vessel, when the ship calls, every time we cite the same certificate over and over again. But if the certificate has an expiry date, then if we capture it, as long as within expiry date, we can safely say that this certificate is still valid. Of course, there could be exceptions. So we do not want to mix the exceptions with the norm. So why penalize those that are the normal processes by because of a certain percentage of exceptions. So when we register, when the shipping agent register this, they upload all the certificates. Of course, for the first time, they need to bring it to the control tower, control center for citing of the original document. But we capture the expiry date, so subsequently they don't need to. But of course, MPA at any time feel that this vessel may have some problem, then they can call for citing of the certificate. Make sure that you still have a valid certificate. But 99.9% of the time, it is normal, right? So this saves a lot of time. In the past, every vessel call, the shipping agent has to bring all the certificates for citing. And then for container ship, the ship profile, where your bay numbering, where are your reefer points and so forth, your trim and step structure and all that. So this is done through PortNet for container ships. And then the vessel arrival and departure declaration, the GDV, General Declaration Voucher, what do you call that? So it's done through MarineNet, and MPA has implemented this electronic port clearance scheme. So it is auto approval for port clearance certificate. So within 24 hours of arrival, the shipping agent needs to declare arrival, and 48 hours before departure. So for short staying vessel, we allow combined declaration, because if you stay less than 48 hours, you might as well declare both arrival and departure. And the shipping agent can print the clearance certificate from the office. It's just printed on the normal A4 paper. So this is where when we digitalize it, we not only digitalize the manual process, we actually do a lot of re-engineering. Right? So notification of arrival, all this will be done through BHF, and this is the normal process done in every port. And then we have the DG declaration, the MarineNet declared to the port chemist or the harbour master, and then to PortNet if the vessel is coming alongside. And PSA does the classification.
Your mic is muted. You might have to unmute.
Oh, so when was the last statement that you have? Oh dear, I'm so sorry.
We might, maybe you can just start through this vessel process again, this slide.
This slide, is it this slide?
That's right.
Dangerous goods declaration? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in PSA we classify class 1 cargo vessels cannot come alongside. Class 2, some can discharge but have to be direct delivery. And then some 2S and so forth can stay in the port but have to be parked at designated DG and then of course we have the class 3 and so forth. So all these are submitted through the Portnet. And then we have the vessel call. So all the documents for submitting to the respective agencies will be done through MarineNet, and for Portnet it will be for berth application and service requests. In the Portnet, the berth application actually combines all the requests for pilot tasks, water, and so forth, because it is the same information that will be used to provide these services. So the above application has this section where you input, and this information will be sent to the relevant service providers. So in Singapore, we have implemented this one handshake system developed by PSA Marine, where all the activities of the ship when it is in port is actually coordinated on this mobile apps. So all the services are all coordinated, and then the shipping agent and the ship captain and the terminal and the service provider all can actually see the information related to the ship activities. So this is the sample of a port clearance certificate that will be printed by the shipping agent in his own office. So for vessels coming alongside, I think we have the service route and then the vessel schedule, which I mentioned earlier on, and then the berth application. So the berth application actually captures a lot of information. I understand from some of the ports that I visited, the information are submitted separately and in different forms. Some are given through emails and all that, but in the Singapore Portnet, the berth application actually has the UI to capture all the information that is required when the ship comes alongside, even down to the lashing and unlashing, whether it's done by the crew or done by the terminal, the bow thruster, whether it's working. This is to determine the number of tacks you need. Berthing direction, whether it's port alongside or starboard along warp side, facing the warp. So all this information are keyed in once into the system for each berth application. And then of course you have the custom declaration is all done through TradeNet. TradeNet is the Singapore single window. And in Singapore, we adopt the front-end value-add services. That means the holders or importers or exporters, they can go to any of these service providers to purchase the front-end software and use it to key the information to submit to TradeNet. Well, in Singapore, we do not have the concept of custom brokers. Actually, every importer, exporter, or holder themselves can declare as they can register as a declaring agent. All they need to do is just go to Singapore Customs website and register themselves. And in order to achieve this, I think the rules has to be very simple, clear, and transparent. Otherwise, you really need a customs broker who is a professional person to help the importer, exporter to make all the submission. Even your HS classification in Singapore, our customs always tell. In fact, it's a mandatory step. When you are bringing in goods for the first time, you need to write to Singapore Customs through the website to say I'm bringing this goods, and then to confirm what is the HS code to be used. No point trying and submitting a HS code and then in the end customs say, oh, your classification is wrong. This is not this HS code. So especially in today's world, you see new gadgets every day. So this is very important to facilitate the declaration. container discharge list, EDO. So the process of releasing containers to the consignee. So the manual process still has to be performed. The exchange of BL, original BL, citing original BL to exchange for DO and ensure all the freight charges and whatever charges have been paid. But the DO is no longer a hard copy DO. It is electronic DO. That means the consignee or his forwarder will bring the original BL to the shipping agent's office. Once all these procedures are cleared, the shipping agent, instead of issuing a paper DO, he'll just go to Portnet and key into the system to say that this BL number, whatever container number has been released to this forwarder or this consignee. And that's all you need, because once it's in the system, the terminal will get to know, the forwarder will receive, the consignee will also receive a copy, So electronically, they can see it in the system. So we have done away with paper DO for many years, actually. So no longer using DO. In fact, in the early days when we started Portnet, of course, we still have the EIR. So we still have the paper DO. So the driver would bring the DO to the documentation room in exchange for the EIR. But subsequently, we allow the haulier to print the EIR in the office. It was at first 6 copies, reduced to 4 copies, and then just 1 copy. And then after that is 0 copy, no more hard copy, no EIR, nothing. In fact, for clearing the cargo at the terminal from the port, the customs clearance is done electronically through TradeNet, and this is received into the terminal system that this customs has cleared this container. So there's no need to have any hard copy at all, actually, for clearance of the container. So free gate is to tag the driver and the vehicle. This is how we can achieve the auto gates, where we process the truck in 25 seconds, because the information are all in the system, which container, which vehicle, and which driver will be arriving. And once this information is verified by the system, the truck can just flow through. So this is for export. Just now I was talking about import. So this is export. So again, is export declaration is to TradeNet. In the past, we used to allow export declaration to be submitted after shipment, after loading. But I think about 5 years ago, we started this AED, Advanced Export Declaration. That means you have to submit before you bring the container into the gate. So this is to make sure that you do not have containers entering your port, staying there, but no export declaration submitted. And then you can't load the container. So we have implemented this a few years ago. Container booking, this is for export, where shipping agent will submit this confirm booking to the system, and then the haulier can come in to create the shipping note, each individual container record after packing. So the release order in the same container booking, the release order is issued to the depot and the forwarder to collect the empties from particular depot, for packing. So all these are in the Portnet so that everybody gets to see the same information without miscommunication. Gate schedule, the system, the terminal will create a gate schedule for allowing the trucks to come in at certain time slot. But this is very important to the terminal, especially in cases where you will have gate congestion. And this is quite a common sight to ports I visit, Well, all drivers seem to think alike, they like certain peak hours. Everybody comes at the same time. So there are hours where the gate is empty, but there are hours where it's congested. So to regulate the traffic, the system open time slot, so all the haulier will come and book the time slot. It's just like I always use the analogy that when you see a general purpose doctor, you just walk in. But when you want to see a specialist, you have to do an appointment, right? You have to make an appointment. So gate scheduling is the same. The terminal will create some schedules for receiving of containers for vessel voyage based on the ETB, 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, So every day they will have a few hours of time slot. So the hauliers will start booking in, and it's based on your gate capacity. If your gate has 5 lanes and each lane can handle 20 trucks in 1 hour, so your 1 hour time slot can have maximum 100 booking because you can only handle that amount. So they should not have any congestion at the gate. And of course, this not only regulate the traffic, ensure no congestion, but it's also ensure that the hauliers do not waste time waiting at the gate. I've seen ports where drivers sit there for several hours before they can reach the gate. This is very unproductive. And we also have, of course, any scheduling or appointment without a penalty is, well, I won't say it's useless, but then you won't get that exact result that you want, because if I book and I don't turn up, or I turn up late, I don't get penalized. That's not, it's not fair to the other guys who have booked, or who have wanted to book the time slot. So when we implement this booking system, we also know the sensitivity. So we do it progressively, and we give a time grace period. So plus and minus 10 minutes, no penalty. Maybe after 10 minutes to half an hour, you have a late charge. But after half an hour, you have a no-show charge. Just like your air ticket, right? When you have no-show, it's a very heavy penalty. You don't get refund, But if you you cancel your booking earlier, then you can get some refund. So we do progressively, and well, it's very helpful because everybody will have to ensure that they keep to the timing, So this is the last section of my presentation on the new generation port TWAS. So what I have a 3-minute video. I'm not sure whether I can play it because I haven't played it before over Teams, but I think it's actually on YouTube. Let me try playing this, see whether you all can see this. Oh, what is this?
Mr. Singh, are you playing a video right now?
Yeah, can you all see it?
No, I think it is not appearing.
Oh, sorry. You all can't see. I need to reshare it.
I need to reshare the desktop and
Okay.
And share it with most likely.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, that's why I need to stop sharing and then I need to share.
share the screen and input computer sound as well.
Are you seeing this?
Yes, we can see now.
Okay.
You might just need to include computer sound button if.
No, actually, it's all music only. There's no narration. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can just expand the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Give me a minute. Sorry, I need to stop that.
Sure.
Let me try and get back to the.
Sure, Mr. Singh.
Wait, I can't find where the YouTube is now. How do I stop it? Okay. No. It's not. Are you able to see my screen again?
We are back at the slides.
Yeah. So You all can hear me clearly?
Yes, that's right. Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So this is the what you have seen is the 3-minute clip of the how the Tuas megaport is built. So it will have 26 kilometers of draft of 23 meters, and we're expecting ships to call. I must apologize. I need to stop the video. Yeah, wait, give me a minute. Yeah, let me stop the video. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Okay, I'm so let me share.
Yeah, we are back at the slides.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, okay. I hope, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is the new generation port. In fact, the Singapore government put a lot of emphasis on this in our National Day. We just had our National Day on the 9th of August, and the Prime Minister's speech also mentioned that the Tuas port will be one of the highlights in the Singapore history. So the first two berths was operational end of last year, and we have another 3 more berths operational by December this year. So the whole Tuas will be operational in 2040. This is how it will look like. It's like 4 fingers. Sometimes you always refer it to 4 fingers, so it's like 4 fingers, and it is some of the technologies used. I think a lot of green technology were put in. And as I mentioned, we have our own private 5G network. So maybe I just go through this. Yeah. So the 5G enabled AGVs, driverless vehicle, and automated cranes. For Tuas, we are using double trolley key cranes. So, and then we have all the control systems. Well, a lot of these are still not fully implemented because we only have 2 berths operational. But what is interesting is that there will be a Singapore Maritime Data Hub, and this is one-stop repository where all the is made accessible to the public, so to speak, the businesses, on all the ship-related information about arrival, departure, and movements, and so forth. So this technology to achieve just-in-time port call. So it's actually aligned with what MPA is going to implement, the Digital Port Initiative, where currently when the ship enters the port waters, they still need to declare to several agencies. The immigration, when they need to declare the crew list and the passenger list, the customs they need to declare manifest, and port health. So MPA is going to implement one portal where they need to submit information only once, and then the system will distribute to these 3 agencies. This is something that MPA is embarking on, still in work in progress. And what is important is also the coordination. When the ship comes to the port, there are a lot of activities, and especially when they take ship supplies and bunkers, PSA will never allow the ship to stay beyond its operation time just to take bunkers or water. So too bad if you cannot finish your bunkering, please leave the berth and go to anchorage and continue your bunkering. So this coordination is very important. So the MP is coming up with this very important centralized portal to ensure that all the activities are coordinated. No wastage of time. Sometimes you have two service providers approaching the ship at the same time, and then one has to wait for the other. So I think that is my last slide. So we can have some time for Q&A.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Fukseng, for that wonderful and insightful presentation. There were lots of questions that were captured on the chat, but at the same time, there were a few questions that we received on email as well. I'll raise some of these things. I think some of the points you covered in the presentation, but some of the areas, minute areas in the questions, I will put it across. Yeah. So one of them is on cargo clearance.
Okay.
The question is on whether there is a process called cargo manifesting, because in Sri Lanka we use to submit the consignment details in the cargo manifest. How does the manifesting take in place for imports as well as exports? How does the transshipment, when it comes to transshipment clearance, what are some of the documents used? That was the question. Maybe you can start with the manifesting.
Yes. Okay. So for PSA, if we are handling containers, we don't need the manifest. We don't need the manifest because the manifest, if you are handling conventional cargo, what they call general cargo, yes, you need to submit the manifest to the terminal. But it is electronic. You can either key into the system through UI, but more often than not, it is through UN EDIFACT message. So we accept EDIFACT message format. We also accept XML format. So all received electronically. Singapore Customs, when you submit your declaration through TradeNet, there's a function for you to upload the manifest. The shipping agent will upload the ocean manifest, and then for NVOCCs, the individual NVOCC will upload the house manifest. So they are attached, they are linked, so the ocean manifest will have a particular BL, and then the NVOCCs will submit the house manifest for that BL. So it's all uploaded electronically. So no hard copy is required. But the rule is you must always have a hard copy kept for 5 years. At any one time, customs may go in and do a random inspection. And this is a very powerful tool. Actually, you asked me, it's just like post-clearance audit. In Singapore, we do a lot of post-clearance audit. Consignees may think that, once I clear the gate, I'm safe, I cross the bridge, But, we have this post-clearance audit that at any time the customs or any agencies can go to your office and do an audit. That means if you declare I'm buying $1 million worth of goods, but your bank statement shows that you remitted $2 million to your seller. So you have to explain why. Or you declare you bought 1,000 tons of these goods, but in your warehouse you find 2,000 tons. You need to explain how to account for this difference. So this is a very powerful tool because it's psychological warfare. Because you a lot of people have the mindset, once I clear the bridge, clear the gate, I'm okay. Or if I submit something electronically, customs says okay, I'm safe. But the rule is that any one time you have to keep the manifest for 5 years. The customs may want to inspect at any one time. Physical manifest, because the original copy. And the post-clearance audit is also the same. In Singapore, we do a lot of risk management. I think this is one of the, in fact, I wanted to share some trade facilitation. I'm not sure whether it's appropriate to share. What the WCO actually has been advocating, the SAFE framework. Basically is to first, one is the advanced information. That means so that customs can do the risk assessment before your goods arrive at your doorstep. The other one is to make sure that to use a non-intrusive inspection. That means your X-rays or whatever detector you have. The risk assessment is very powerful because I conduct webinars on trade facilitation as well, and so the message is, why would you penalize the law-abiding citizen or trader that every time he abides by the law and submit everything truthfully, and you treat him the same way as the other crook who cheats you every other declaration? So it's not fair, right? So, and in fact, probably 99% of the declarations are truthful. I mean, it varies from country to country, but if your rules are good enough, tight enough, I think in Singapore, we always advocate self-compliance. You make sure you comply, the rule. But if once you are caught, then the penalty is very heavy, and you in certain cases you may be jailed. So this is how we play the game. You declare, but if customs has the right at any one time to go and inspect, do a post-clearance audit, do an inspection, or what we call the bank statements, all this, they can check. So this is something that we do. We make the rule very clear, transparent, easy to understand. But at the same time, everybody must play by the rule. But once you are caught, you'll be penalized. So risk assessment, risk management is very key to customs modernization. And this is one of the pillars that the WCO is advocating under the SAFE framework. So we have the document citing as one level, original document citing. Of course, the green lane means everything goes. The other level will be the document citing, original document citing. And then, of course, we have the X-ray. And then the third highest level would be physical inspection, opening of containers. But just to let you know, in PSA, inspection does not take place inside the port. For the last 50 over years, the port has been pushing the customs outside the gate, and we give them a piece of land just outside the gate. You let the container out. If it is red lane, we will tell the driver, go to the red lane. Once you leave the red lane, you enter into customs inspection area. So you will not congest. You will not cause congestion and long dwelling time in the port. So if you want to inspect, you tell us red lane, you tell the driver go to red lane, and then PSA gives them a piece of land just outside the lane, all fenced up for customs to inspect. Unlike many countries where the containers stay in the port and then customs will ask, ground this container and I want to inspect it. Sometimes it's very inconvenient to the port, because if the container is right at the bottom of a stack, they have to do it. But different countries practice different way. But so we in Singapore we do it this way. Yeah. Okay. So for clearance, actually there's no paper required at all. The TradeNet, they submit all the import-export transshipment, and then once it is approved, in fact, the TradeNet 90% or 95% of the declarations are auto-approved. We have fine-tuned the rules over the last 30 years, such that all the criteria that if your declaration conforms or satisfy all these criteria, the system will auto approve it. But of course, subject to customs release, So once the cargo, so we split the process into two: the documentation approval, and then the cargo release comes later. So when you take out the cargo, before you take out, we'll let you know that you'll be red lane when you leave. So red lane you'll be diverted to customs inspection area. So at the point of declaration, the system were in the past, but the last few years we've even done away with this paper. We only need one piece of paper. Actually, the declarant, after getting approval, it just print one piece of paper on the A4 size, a normal paper, and then bring that paper to the port for clearance. That is all they need. Even now, that paper is electronic. That paper is actually transmitted from customs system into the port system. So we already know that this clearance has been given by the customs. There's no need to have paper at all, So in fact, it is totally paperless now, actually. So for declaration, they upload whatever certificate they need, Again, the same rule. Customs can ask for citing of original, documents, But as I say, 99% of the time it is, is conforming. Of course, then customs will also have a lot of intelligence information where they suspect certain containers. So if you in Singapore, every now and then we also have news appearing in the news that a particular truck has been caught with a container or a 20-footer container of cigarettes without paying duty smuggled in. The duties was tobacco and cigarette is very high in Singapore. It's 35 Singapore cents per stick. So 120-foot container of cigarette, the duties is worth about 1 million Sing dollars. So once in a while you will hear news that customs caught these trucks and all that. But the rest of the compliance, I think it is fairly regulated, I would say.
Yeah. So two connected questions to what you explained, Mr. Singh. One is the customs examinations that take place, and we call it a process called container detention, customs detention. If containers are detained, what's the kind of process, and how do this process, how does it get visibility up to the point that the examinations are done and the containers go out? How does it happen? If you can just elaborate.
Okay, I think actually detention is quite rare in Singapore. The only reason that the container is detained is probably customs suspect that something is not what is being declared. So the only way to prove it is to inspect it, open the container and inspect it. Why detain it, right? So this is where it goes up by the red lane, and then it goes into customs inspection area to open and inspect the container. On the spot, you already know that what is declared and is it what it contains. So there are hardly any reason why we detain a container inside the port. In fact, in my 30 over years dealing with PortNet and TradeNet and the port and Singapore Customs, we hardly come across cases where containers are being detained in the port. PSA will not allow it, actually. So if you want to inspect the container, go ahead, go to the red lane and do it at the inspection area. Don't congest my yard with all your detention containers. That's the message here.
Thank you. And also on the manifesting, there was another question sent because often you get this requirement to make amendments for commercial purposes. It's called manifest amendments.
Yes.
So what's the kind of process which is followed at the moment? Can you elaborate a little?
Amendments of manifest is also allowed electronically, but depending on what you amend, certain information you may need to submit a declaration to customs, sort of in the form of a letter, why you need to make this amendment because of somebody's mistake upstream, in the originating country or whatever, So it can be done through the system. The system allows certain fields to be amended. Those that cannot be amended, they will have to submit a letter to customs to explain why they need to make the change. And that part, customs will do the amendment for them. So there's no need to resend the hard copy or in fact, there was no original hard copy. It's all electronic. Yeah.
Okay, so these will be like signed letters, or are they digitally signed soft copies?
No, this is a hard copy declaration that they need to submit to explain to customs why they need to amend. In fact, Singapore Customs focus not so much on the cargo amendment, but I mean, if we are talking about risk, then we customs is more concerned if you change local container, local import to transshipment. That you have to explain, why suddenly you want to ship it out.
Requirements, especially whether there are documents that needs to be submitted about crew, passengers to the masters, and whether some officers need to book the vessels and so on. So there's a question to that effect. We didn't. I don't think you covered in the pre-arrival explanation that area. If you can just cover whether there's a need to pre-arrival process, how it takes.
Okay. So I think we have been practicing in Singapore. We have been practicing pre-arrival clearance together with advanced immigration clearance. So advanced immigration clearance means the shipping agent needs to submit the crew list information electronically to immigration, and then the immigration department will clear the crew list or passenger list. In fact, passengers, we clear it at the gate. Actually, when the passengers disembark, it's just like you're coming out of the airport. We clear at the gate. We do not clear the passenger passports. In some countries, cruise ships, the immigration officer will board the cruise ship somewhere at the anchorage, at the boarding ground, and then they clear the passports on board the ship as the cruise ship berths alongside. But in Singapore, we don't do that. We let the passenger disembark and then we clear them just like they come down from the airplane. But the crew list is cleared in advance electronically, and the other documents are also cleared in advance. So PSA will not allow the ship to come alongside if it's not pre-cleared. Because if you come alongside, you sit at the berth, you are actually sitting on a very expensive asset and doing nothing. So all ships that comes alongside would have been pre-cleared. So all the parties, customs, the harbour master, the immigration, all would need to pre-clear the information, pre-clear the ship before it can come alongside.
Thank you for that. And there's one question about whether or is there a process to identify and validate the accuracy of data that is submitted by exporters and shipping agents when it comes to export shipments. Does it happen in the TradeNet system or in the PortNet system? How does just to ensure that the data that is entered or prepared is actually getting shipped out?
So for goods exported, the exporters will have to submit the export permits. That means they already gotten the permits from customs. They need to submit the permits to the shipping line within 7 days of export. This is in the rule. And then the shipping agent will have to do the reconciliation with the manifest within 14 days. And this is done electronically. It is not on paper. The system will. There's a submission. There's a function for the shipping agent to submit the reconciliation report by highlighting the discrepancies. If there are no discrepancies, they just submit a nil return. But the onus is on responsibility is on the shipping agent to do the reconciliation. That means every manifested item must be accompanied by an export permit.
Thank you. The next question relates to the delivery order. I think you explained the process, how it works, Mr. Singh, but it's just that what I noticed there was, you mentioned that some of the information like the BL number and so on will have to be keyed in. So are these information, once keyed in, validated against any information which is in the system?
No, BL number is still the BL is still not electronic at the moment, but we are working on the EBL. In fact, EBL is the initiative. It's actually a global initiative for the last 20 over years, but not much success because of the importance of because of the what they call that. The rights to the ownership of the goods, once at the BL. So, but we have a version implemented. But the BL number is keyed into the PortNet, but it is not validated against the original hard copy. Yeah. But when issuing the DO, the shipping agent will have to cite the original BL, and they will have to check the information against the system before they release the container. So instead of actually the same process of issuing a paper DO, instead of typing out on the paper with the letterhead of the shipping agent, it just go into PortNet and key in that this BL number, this container has been released to so and so. And at the same time, the depot, if they put in the depot operator code, the depot will also know that the empty returns will go back to this depot. So the depot is expecting this empty return after X number of days, validity period of the DO. Yeah. So it's all electronic. There's no hard copy DO anymore, actually. But the process of citing original BL still takes place. That is too important to be done away with at the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. There's a question which came in. How does Singapore measure bird productivity at present?
Okay. Actually, bird productivity, I think, is a host of parameters and KPIs. That the port needs to look at. Like I mentioned earlier on, the ATB to first discharge is one measurement. Do you start work immediately within 10 minutes? In fact, KPI in Singapore is 10 minutes. From ATB to first discharge is 10 minutes. So we measure that. Your last activity to ATU is 30 minutes. So this is actually a measurement of how productive your berth is, in a sense that you are not wasting an expensive asset. So also we use vessel rate and crane rates. So if you're putting in 4 cranes, so we know that what will be crane the rate of each of the crane, and sometimes crane intensity is also another KPI. And of course the terminal will try to achieve equal split, so that you don't have a long crane and a short crane. All cranes completed work waiting for just one crane to finish another, 100 containers. That is not so productive. So ship planners will try to do equal crane split, but sometimes may not be achievable because of the way containers are stored. So these are all the parameters that needs to be taken into consideration when you talk about how productive the berth is. And of course, the time between the berth and the distance between the berth, all these are fixed parameters. I mean, for safety reasons, so all these are fixed. So I mean, the system, the rules are all built into the system. You will not allocate one ship and then the other ship is 100 meters away, where you only need 30 meters clearance. Right? So the system has all the rules built in, so you do not waste. Yeah.
I think the next question refers to possibly the drivers capturing of facial recognition and thumb recognition. Yeah, and how is it handled if a last minute change is required? Let's see through the question here.
When there's a last minute change of driver,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, in the first place, all the vehicles are pre-registered. We have a vehicle registration. In fact, we actually synchronize with the Land Transport Authority, of Singapore, so that, at the moment we use the device that is installed on every vehicle by the Land Transport Authority. That means the Ministry of Transport. So that is the device that we read to identify the truck. For the driver, every driver, or in fact anybody that enters the port needs to have a pass. So they need to register, and they need to register using thumbprint or facial recognition. All these are pre-stored into the system. So in the process of, say, somebody comes in to take a container, you need to do a pre-gate, which means the haulier will need to tag the container with the driver and the truck. But if there's a last-minute change, the truck may break down halfway. So there's a last-minute change, you need to update the system. Otherwise, they cannot clear the gate. If the last minute, the driver is not able to turn up to drive that truck, the haulier needs to update into the system. So otherwise, it doesn't match in what is given in the system, they cannot enter the gate. Yeah.
And this question is the PCS, is it one central system among all terminals?
In Singapore, yes, all the terminals operated by Singapore is by PSA is under one. It technically is called instance, one PCS. And in fact, we have implemented the PCS for one cluster of ports in China. They have 4 terminals and 4 container terminals and 3 conventional terminals using the same PCS. But the information are identified by the terminal ID. So we know that this container is meant for this terminal. And, the terminal 1 cannot look at terminal 2 information. So things like that. This is for access right, and also make sure that, the container doesn't end up in the wrong place. So the PortNet can handle multiple terminals, but the information are stored very clearly as the identifier, that, this terminal 1 means it's terminal 1. Yeah.
Okay. So this next question is, how is your interport connectivity built? And then he also asks whether you can name a few brands that is being used for HHTs and so on.
Sorry, brands of chassis?
BMTs and HHTs and so on, the models used, and how the interport connectivity which has been built.
Okay, interport, that means port-to-port connectivity, is that the question? Actually, it's bilateral. So So PSA, for this information, PSA will not disclose how they have, which are the ports they have exchanged. But something that I can disclose is that the MPA is working on initiative that allows interport exchange of information. That means if a ship sails from Hong Kong to Singapore, the moment the ship sails from Hong Kong, the Hong Kong port has the responsibility to submit that information into the system, and such that we can receive it, that we know that this vessel is on the way from Hong Kong to Singapore. Likewise, if the ship sails from Singapore to Hong Kong, we will also put that information so that they can actually receive advance information, so that they know that based on this departure time from the last port, they will know whether the ship will come on time or not. So this is one. The other one is about equipment brand. I don't think I'm able to answer that question. Anyway, yeah, but only thing I can tell you is that this is actually a public info. All the key cranes, in fact, I think more than 70 to 80% of the key cranes in the world are manufactured by China. This company called ZM Zhenhua Machinery, ZPMG. In fact, 70%, more than 70% of the key cranes in the world are manufactured. So PSA, we have been using this. Of course, in the early days, we use Samsung crane, we use different brand. But nowadays, I think almost all the cranes are from China. They are the biggest manufacturer of key crane. One key crane at the moment, I think, costs about $10 million US. It's
Right.
expensive stuff.
Then there's a question: how damaged containers are, or container damages are handled in the system, or is it handled in the same system, or is it a different system? That seems to be the question.
Okay, there are two stages. Right? One is at the point of discharge, there is the cursory check of the container. If it's a big hole on the container, we still have a person on the ground. We cannot totally do without the person on the ground. When there is, but when we are talking about managed operations, that one, I have no idea how they're going to do it, because this is going to be operating in Tuas, and we are doing a pilot run in Pasmanjang. But for 90% of the containers handled now, there's a person on the ground to do a cursory inspection when it's discharged. And if there's a very obvious damage, like a big hole, or half the container is dented, then of course the report will have to be written. The other stage is at the outgate. At the outgate, the driver can request for a full survey, or if not, then it will be a cursory survey of the condition of the container. Yeah, and we capture for the survey, we capture the information into the system. So we will indicate that the hole on the left panel, top right hand corner of the left panel, or a big dent in the right hand corner of the top panel.
Share reefer monitoring details, possibly referring to the TOS or the PCS.
Okay.
It seems, is there a separate system for reefer monitoring?
Okay, all the reefer information are captured in the PCS and sent to the TOS. That means in your discharge list, if you declare this as a reefer container, you will have to declare the temperature, the humidity percentage, and the ventilation, whether it's half, I don't know. So some of these are technical terms. So all these need, the temperature, all these need to be declared in the discharge list. And then PSA does provide reefer temperature monitoring. I think every 3 or 4 hours, technicians will go around to monitor, unless the container has this remote control, remote temperature monitoring capability. Then the RFID, we will transmit the temperature. Then we do it remotely. Otherwise, we will do the reefer temperature monitoring. And it can be made available through Portnet, but it is a paid report. That means if you see, PSA needs to monitor the temperature to protect ourselves, right? That, you know, your container minus 15 degrees has been consistently minus 15 degrees centigrade for the last 24 hours when it was in our port. You know, every 4 hours we take the temperature. But the consignee can also request for that report, but it would be a paid service. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The next question refers to what is the legal frame? I believe what is the legal framework of accessing digitalized documents? Maybe the type of laws that are applicable, as all the documents are shared electronically. Yes.
Okay. If you ask me, very frankly, when we implement Portnet, there was no law on digital submission, because way back in 1989, so the port, you know, the government of Singapore, we allowed the agencies to issue regulations, right? So it's not a law, but it's regulations issued by the agency. So we write notice to all the stakeholders to say that from this date onwards, we will accept digital copy as true and a legal copy. You know, that is allowed. I mean, but then of course, subsequently we have the Electronic Transaction Act put in place. We also have the E-Commerce Act and also have the Evidence Act. So all these are now in place in Singapore. So electronic or digital information can be used as evidence in court. You know, it's accepted. So all these the laws are all in place by now. But way back in 1989, when we implement, we issue regulations. Yeah, because we can't wait for the law. It may take 5 years before the law is passed, or you know. Yeah.
And the next question refers to what is the business model used, possibly referring to the revenue model.
Okay, for Singapore, it's operated by PSA. In fact, when Portnet was built, PSA was for authority, so it was actually state funded, you know, state government funded. But when we split the regulatory role and operator role, PSA took the Portnet. I mean, of course, MPA didn't charge us. I mean, it was already sunk cost, right? So it was developed, we took over, and we maintain it and enhance it by PSA itself. That is the business model in Singapore. But information submission is not chargeable. So shipping agents, when they submit pay plan, when discharge list, they don't have to pay. But simple inquiries is also free, like vessel schedule, burden schedule, container tracking, all these are free. But there are certain reports that are consolidated from different sources that actually provide some analytics in it. Those are chargeable. Some of the reports are chargeable. In fact, the shipping agents are more than willing to pay because it helps them a lot. You know, help them a lot with this information. You know, where we consolidate information from different sources.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, are all stakeholders on board?
Sorry, maybe on the business model, what I mentioned was Singapore PSA business model. But in other countries, we also have PPP business model. That means private-public partnership. So the government may appoint a private operator jointly with agency to run the PCS. Yeah. Okay, sorry, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Singh. And then, are all stakeholders on board? If not, what's the mechanism to get some of the others on board, or how to handle those who are on board and those who are not connected, if at all, if there are stakeholders who are not on board?
Okay, I think even TradeNet, we achieved 100% or 99% in about 1.5 years. 1.5, which I think is a pretty good result because I've seen systems where 3 years is still not fully paperless. For Portnet, I think we did it in a shorter time because the port really did, digitalization and paperless operations. So what we do, like I mentioned, the documentation counters we reduce, and then so the message is very clear. If you want to continue with paper, you have to queue. You take a longer time, and you see the Portnet of PCS is such that the steps are all linked. So if one stakeholder is not participating, the guy downstream cannot use it. So the pressure is among the businesses themselves that, hey, why are you not using electronic? If you don't use electronic, the next guy downstream will have to use paper as well, So the pressure is that, they will get the whole community. In fact, Singapore, we are very, very fortunate. Just like in Sri Lanka, you have CASA, representing shipping agents, right? So when we implement Portnet, I work very closely with the Singapore Shipping Agents Association, with the Singapore Freight Forwarders Association. We have the Depot Operators Associations, So all these associations are very supportive, and they would encourage their members, through a lot of change management program. Yeah.
The next question is saying, is artificial intelligence being used in any of the port functions?
Yes, in the TOS, but not in the PCS. Yeah, in the TOS, the backend terminal operations. But more of these are being used in the new generation port, the TOS port. But the current terminals, we in the CTOS, we do have some AI. In fact, our storage planning system in 1990 is won the AAAI award by US, the Association of Artificial Intelligence or something like that. That is the award given by US. Yeah.
The next question is the system connected to government authorities such as customs? Yes, I think we can.
Yes, the answer is yes. Yeah.
Go on. And then how Portnet communicates with different stakeholder systems?
It's more of a technical question, but it's host to host, so it depends on the stakeholder system. So I think the global Portnet that we are talking about is we are using we have an EDI engine using SFTP. So the shipping agent will just drop a file into this server, and then we are able to pick it up. Yeah. So the integration is dependent on the how you design it and how the stakeholder systems can integrate.
So the next question, I think you already answered about making it mandatory for connectivity. That was covered, I think. We'll go into in Singapore port. Have you controlled productivity data misinterpretation? For example, there have been some data entry on short timings instead of the actual times. And I think the person who wrote the question says that which has direct impact on vessel GCR, which I believe is gross
crane rate. Yeah.
Performance, yeah. Control this productivity on misinterpretation.
I'm not sure whether it has happened, but I mean Murphy's law, anything can go wrong. But there are a lot of cross checks. So the only I think if there's any data errors in the entry, would be like handling UCs and some of those exceptions. Because handling the normal boxes, I don't think it can go. In fact, it's all automated, right? The moment we measure from the time the crane operator press the button to say that this is discharged, and then until the container is off mounted at the yard. So all these timing are all captured. So and then the next crate, the next container that's been discharged, the operator will press on the system that this is discharged, confirm discharge. So all those may not cannot go wrong in the sense that they are all linked. But when you handle UC or some of the special containers, then it may be more on the manual. Sometimes it may take 2 hours to just discharge a UC. So that one will affect productivity. But it may not be data error, but then it will definitely affect the overall crane rate. Yeah.
And this next question is, in case of short landings or over landings, how the container discharge list is reconciled?
I think all this will have to go into the TOS directly. Short land, I think short land is at the point of operations, then it's short land or overland, right? So you will not go back to the discharge list. But the system does allow amendment of the discharge list. But then it may be, the TOS itself will have to update the information, have to create the container into the TOS, the TOS directly without the discharge list. But then the system allows it. In fact, the terminal will have to create into the portnet, not into the TOS directly. But the shipping agent may not be able to create it because the vessel has already come alongside. So certain information after the cutoff time, the terminal users will have to create it into the portnet, and then the portnet upload it back to the TOS to say this is short land or overland.
The next question refers to, I think, the BLs and blockchain related. Would you consider allowing tokenized bills of lading as NFTs on a public blockchain? Has it considered, or is it being considered?
Yeah, we are working on this using blockchain, but I won't be able to answer the technical aspects of it. But definitely we are working on the EBL. Yeah.
What's the vessel movement for berthing and sailing sequence stroke transparency in the Port of Singapore? What is the vessel movement sequence? Would you need any elaboration on this, Mr. Singh?
What was the vessel movement, is it?
Yes. Siddhant, if you are there, would you like to, you can speak and get the question.
Yeah. Actually, how do you control as an authority of Port of Singapore during the berthing sailing movements on the vessel type, cargo types plus sequencing? How transparent for each terminals? How do you?
Okay, actually, okay. For the ATB and the ATU, I think the pilot will determine the time. That means, for the container, I believe this question will be relevant for landlocked ports, where I've come across many ports where the port authority gives concession to private operators, and then they collect the concession fee based on the throughput. So in fact, port authority approaching me that they have been cheated by the concession operator because they handle 1 million and then they declare I only handle 500,000 containers. So but for PSA we don't have this problem because the terminals are operated by PSA. And the MPA is not concerned about. It's not that they are not concerned, but it doesn't have any commercial implication. That no reason for PSA to short declare or over declare. And of course, we are also responsible to the government statistics department, our trade ministry. So there's no reason why we should not declare accurately. But I know that for landlord ports, they always face this problem. The terminal operator will under declare so that they pay less fees to the port authority, to the landlord. Yeah.
And the next question is, does the OCR system work perfectly at the BOF?
OCR is
character recognition, I believe.
I know, but at the gate, we are talking about at the gate, we have the container number recognition number, which it doesn't use OCR. Actually, we have every lane, I think, has a set of something like 16 cameras that we capture the container number at all angles, because you can have a 40-foot chassis with two 20-foot containers or one 20-foot container, so we capture all the container numbers, and then we use our own in-house software to interpret the digital image. And then we match it with what is being declared by the haulier in the hotnet. Yeah. So we achieve 99% accuracy, actually.
Okay. I would request Gimhana to get your question out, Gimhan, on how to identify seals available when two containers in one truck. Gimhana, are you there? Okay, we'll just move on.
Sorry, what is the question?
It says for AutoGate, how to identify seal when two containers
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the question is when we move, when we use AutoGate functions, so there, if there are two containers in one truck, so sometimes the seal of the second truck will be hide. So how we identify that second seal when we use the AutoGate out?
Actually, I won't be able to answer that question. This is more on the gate.
All right. So we'll move into the next question, Mr. Peng. If any container is detained by customs for investigation, how long it will take to finalize the investigations? If it takes a long time, is there any mechanism to destuff the unit and release empty unit to the container operator?
Well, okay. In PSA, we do not have any more CFS inside the port. So the only way is to get customs to do the inspection at the outgate, and then in some cases, customs allow the container. They put a seal at the outgate, and then the containers can be trucked to the consignee's premises, and then they will have to wait for the customs officer to break the seal and inspect the cargo or take out the cargo from there. So, in cases where, the empties need to be returned to the liner, then perhaps this method may work. That means any inspection that, prolonged inspection or detention that customs need, best is to seal the container at the outgate and then let it go to the premises, the consignee premises, and then the customs officer go there to break the seal and unstuff all the cargo and inspect and then store into the warehouse or mark it as detained or whatever, and then the empties can be returned to the carrier. Yeah.
Okay. Then this question is Portnet or the electronic TOS only for containers, or is it integrated or applicable to other cargo operations like liquid as well? I think you covered.
For general cargo as well as car carriers, bulk, break bulk, and car carriers as well. Yeah.
Right. Then possibly the last question on the chat, Mr. Singh, is that Singapore being a very congested port, especially for transshipment, are there any steps taken to improve, reduce the transit time, or is it the dwell time? Varuna, you're on.
Time.
Dwell time?
Yeah.
So Singapore is a very congested port.
Transshipment is our core business, actually, right? I guess the world knows that we most of the 37.5 million TEUs that we handle, a very high percentage, even up to 70% are transshipment. How do we improve or reduce transit time? I think connectivity is one of the key answers. Like what I showed earlier on with daily sailings to US, 2 sailings, and to Southeast Asia, I think we have 28 sailings every day. So it is some form of assurance given to the carrier that, you bring your container here, I can guarantee you that within 24 hours, or you can get it onto any connecting second carrier within this region, Southeast Asia, or in fact it's the same day, or you can send it to the US by we have 2 sailings every day, things like that. So this is something that the connectivity is important. Second one will be more, we have been using the tariffs to achieve our strategy, right? Because in Singapore, for import containers, we give the consignee 3 days free storage. But for transshipment, we give 7 days. In the early days where we do not have that much of connection, we give 14 days free storage. Because I can't get you a second carrier, so it's not your fault. So I cannot charge you storage, But now with this connectivity, there's no reason that within 7 days you can't find a second carrier to bring your container to where you want it to be. So we have reduced the transshipment storage. And it works because, everybody will know that if I can't get this out within this time period, then I have to pay for the storage. I think the way to improve the transit time is first at the point of discharging, in the discharging list, I think it's not mandatory, but we always encourage the carrier to declare the second carrier, the second leg, so that when we discharge your container, we move it to your loading yard immediately. So you will reduce one move actually. Resort to a common area, and then later you tell me it's going to vessel A, then I will load it to truck the container to vessel A. Yeah, So this is one way. The other way is actually at the point of discharge. We try not to have very okay. We provide what we call the tight connection. So even if you have negative connection time, we can, minimally connection between 2 carriers would be like 12 hours or 6 hours. From the sailing time of the first carrier to the berthing time of second carrier, it must have a difference of at least 6 or 12 hours, whatever, But in PSA, to encourage tight connection, we can reduce this because your container may be the first to be discharged and then the last to be loaded. So your actual your connection time can be maybe 48 hours actually in actual fact. So we do some planning such that we can help you to reduce your transit time by providing this tight connection. Yeah. It's actually a premium service for tight connection because some carriers really need it because if they miss that connection, they may have to wait for 3 days, for the next the next call, So they would pay a premium to get that tight connection. Yeah.
Prashant, I have another one regarding the same question. Mr. Fook, I know that there is a charge called renomination charge. If we are changing the transshipment service in Singapore.
Yes.
Yeah, so imagine it's rather than keeping the container or containers at port within around 1 month. If we can improve the if we can connect to a different service without keeping the containers more than the 1 month, so is there any possibility to waive off those renomination charge? So I think it's it will helpful for you guys to minimize the congestion.
Sorry, I can't answer that question for waiver, and I think it depends on the reason why you need to renominate. Normally, renomination is when the second carrier doesn't turn up or delay in the second carrier. So you may want to, or the second carrier comes early, you miss the connection, But other than that, with the, I think most with the connectivity available, I think. Renomination may not be that frequent in Singapore, actually. But about the waiver and under what conditions you will not be charged renomination charge, I can't answer that. I mean, I'm not in the PSA ops, so I have no position to reply to that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Blue.
Mr. Krishant, you are in mute.
Krishant, I'm sorry. There was another question. It's got popped up. Do you have priority lanes for export-import trucking? Meaning, do you use any truck pre-booking system to enter?
Yeah, we have the gauge scheduling system. That means the 5 days before the ETB, the terminal will open time schedules for accepting export containers. So there will be time slots for the truckers to book. But there's no priority lane except for maybe in cases where maybe 1 day before the vessel arrival, we may open more time slots. If we see that there's still a lot of containers not in the terminal yet, so we will open more time slots for that vessel. So we do not have what we call priority lane, but the terminal will have to monitor. If we are expecting 1,000 export containers by day, 1 day before ETB, you still have 500 not in the port. That's a serious problem. So they will have to open a lot of time slots and make sure that these trucks are able to bring in the containers. But I think for such cases, there will always be an investigation. Why is that, 500 containers choose to come in on the last day? Any particular reason, things like that. Yeah.
Jayanta, you can raise the question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Fook. This is Jayanta.
Yeah.
And this is connected to the former question raised. What do you do if the truck arrives late than scheduled? Do you turn the truck back or put him on a normal lane?
No. We actually impose a penalty, but we will still let him in. Yeah. So, like I say, if it is 10 minutes, is grace period. Within 30 minutes, I think that's a fine penalty of X dollars. And then if beyond 30 minutes, then you turn up is maybe triple X, so more expensive penalty, but we will still let the container in. Yeah, we try not to turn the truck away because it's very unproductive, both for the port as well as for the truck. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Singh, there's one more question. Is there a website or a source where commodities which cannot be transshipped in Singapore is published?
I'm not sure, but maybe you can check the Singapore Customs website. I'm not sure whether they publish that. We have a list of controlled commodities, but whether it's related to transshipment, I'm not sure. You can check the Singapore Customs website. Maybe you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can take one more question. If somebody has a question, can you use reactions and raise hand? I can just take one question, please. All right. So I think we can conclude our session. I think on behalf of CASA, Mr. Fuchsen, thank you so much for obliging and carrying out this extremely informative and a very comprehensive presentation on the processes. And
my pleasure.
Answering almost all of the questions and then being very candid and open also about all of them. And also I thank all the invitees as well as the members who have joined, and for your patience as well as the people who sent in questions to make it more meaningful. Once again, Mr. Fuchsen, thank you so much on behalf of CASA.
My great pleasure for being able to share some of my experiences, and I would like to thank CASA for making this possible for me. Thank you, and thank you to all. Great thank you to all the participants who actively participating in listening as well as in typing in your questions. Yeah, my pleasure once again. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.